Earlier today in Rome, Pope Francis canonized Mother Teresa as a saint. He recognized in an off-the-cuff remark, apparently, that it might be kind of hard to call her Saint Teresa because she'll be mainly always known as Mother Teresa. She's kind of a great saint of our own time. And I think it's important for us as Catholics, because you might see it on the news later, to know a little bit about why do we canonize saints. Well, first of all, we realize and we pray that all who die can become saints in heaven after they pass through a period of purgation, a time of letting go of sinfulness or darkness in their life, that they may be ready to walk through that narrow gate. So we recognize that for all of the faithful. But there are some, because of their public witness, because of the acts that they did, because of their notoriety or whatnot, or extreme witness, that they're recognized publicly as saints. And it's not that we pick and choose, but it's also that they were more people that were known. So their goodness is known, and that goodness then can kind of go around to touch the hearts of many people, not just a few like a family, but in the case of Mother Teresa, she was known worldwide. She was known around the world as someone who, for her good deeds, and because of her goodness, it's hopeful that others may have embraced that gift of goodness. So it is their public witness. And the rules for canonization involve various things, but one of them has to be there are two miracles that have to be put forth and verified, attributed to the person's intercession because they are there with God. So in the case of Mother Teresa, there was a woman who had a stomach tumor, and she went through all kinds of medical treatments, and it was determined she was healed because she prayed to Mother Teresa. There was no scientific explanation for the healing except for those prayers, that devotion, that dedication she had to Mother Teresa. There was also a gentleman who had a brain tumor, multiple tumors apparently, and his family prayed, and he received healing. So those two miracles in particular were presented to the Vatican, to a group that looks at the whole idea of someone becoming a saint publicly, and then they review it, and then it's determined. It has to take usually at least 5 years for it to come before this particular group at the Vatican. But in the case of Mother Teresa, it was only a couple of years later, St. John Paul II allowed her cause for canonization to be brought forth sooner. So, it was only 17 years ago that she passed away. She's a saint really of our modern time. And she really had a beautiful way of understanding and of witnessing to the poor. Actually, Pope Francis, in his words this morning, indicated that she was a voice that came before the powers of the world so that they would recognize the crimes of poverty that they had created. Kind of really a mouthful of a sentence, but something also that is very, very true. Poverty is sometimes allowed to go on. Mother Teresa, this little Albanian nun, was not afraid to speak up about it. She took up the cause of poverty as really trying to combat it, not just in the streets of Calcutta, but she brought the streets of Calcutta to the universal knowledge of everybody. And so as a result, that's one of the reasons why we recognize her today. She was a voice for the poor. And in her world, she defined poverty as the unwanted, the uncared for, the unloved, and the forgotten. So the least, the last, and the lost. So she worked tirelessly in order to help overcome that disease of poverty that exists here in our world. And she saw poverty obviously as suffering, but she also saw suffering as something that was a positive. She's going to be known really as a saint of darkness because she will be able to come and bring light to light the lives of those who live in darkness. It was said that she herself had moments of darkness where she questioned God, and people were all concerned about that. How could Mother Teresa have questioned God? Well, she was not God. She was a saint. So she was a special and holy person, and many saints in the midst of their journey closer to God, also realize that there's a distance from God, and they work hard to overcome it. And so she really saw suffering as, yes, a darkness that exists, but she also saw suffering and people who were suffering as being blessed, because she said that suffering was like being kissed by Jesus, because you became so close to Jesus in your suffering that you would know what it was to be embraced and kissed by him. In our gospel reading today, we hear about suffering and discipleship, and that life as a disciple is going to include suffering, darkness, taking up the cross. And so as a result, the people who hear this from the 14th chapter of Luke's gospel, we can remember that in Luke's gospel, around chapter 9 and 10, he makes a turn and he says, we're going to start going to Jerusalem. And he starts leading the people to Jerusalem so that he would face his own cross. And along the way, he speaks to the people about the rich. And he tells them that the rich are self-centered and they need to be brought down a few notches. He speaks to the people about the Pharisees. And he said the Pharisees are like painted tombs. They look great on the outside, but they're rotten on the inside. And the people cheer at this. They say, wow, we've never heard someone speak like this. He speaks about the scribes and about that they are nitpicky and they need to stop that. And the people go wild and more people start following him. They follow him everywhere. They love it when he talks about evil. And he said we have to combat evil. And the people say, wow, this is great. Nobody else, none of our other religious leaders speak this way. But you see, when Jesus talks about a cross, when Jesus spoke about suffering, when Jesus said that their discipleship has to be planned, and he invites them into this life of a disciple, there's silence. There's like crickets. You can't hear anything because nobody wants to embrace that suffering. My friends, that's why we need people in the world like Mother Teresa. It's because she was able to overcome any fear that she had of suffering, and I think she helps us to overcome that. That today, her canonization as now Saint Mother Teresa or Saint Teresa of Calcutta, whatever you want to refer to her as, is intriguing because, first of all, she lived in our modern day. She walked this world as we walk the world and saw the world as we saw it, not in a medieval time, but she sees it today. And she called it what it is. She called poverty a travesty. She called people to not be afraid to look at the leper, to look at the person who maybe was scaly, the person who you wouldn't want to even associate with, have at your dinner table. And she said, embrace them, love them, kiss them, as the face of Jesus kisses us in our suffering. So she was modern day, photographed with world leaders, getting into places where you would never think you could get into. We probably think of her as being this, humble little woman. I assure you, she could not have done what she did if she didn't have a sense of mission, a sense of passion, and a plan. And basically, her plan was to go everywhere, go out into the streets and meet people where they are at and bring them to God. But also, Mother Teresa represents for us the ability to overcome our own inhibitions of suffering, whether it be personally or whether it be with other people. To say, I'm not going to run from my suffering, but I'm going to embrace it as Jesus embraced the cross. And so it's a chance for us today to ask for her intercession, that we also may have the grace of seeing beyond suffering and being able to see Christ in the darkness. To not be afraid of those dark moments in our own life. To not be afraid of facing it with other people. Of saying, I don't know if I want to get involved because of the fact that if I get involved, it means that I have relationship. Well, Mother Teresa was all about relationship. Jesus is all about relationship. Coming forward to receive the Eucharist today is all about relationship. And in that relationship, we have that chance, the opportunity, the blessing to embrace darkness, light, suffering, joy, good, bad, and to say we can overcome it. So after Mass today, you have the opportunity to come forward here in front of the sanctuary, or you may do so in the narthex. We have 2 relics. Now, relics are items that perhaps were of the person, or perhaps like something that they owned or whatnot that represent them. And some people don't understand this. We're not worshiping a relic. I want to make this clear. We're seeing it as a reminder of the person. If you go to your home, you probably have pictures of family around. Well, that's what the relic is. You may not want to get rid of a table that belonged to your great-grandmother because it reminds you of them. So that's what a relic is all about. This particular relic that we have up front is a piece of one of her habits. So it was of clothing that she wore, something that was very close to her. And so that will be up front. In the back, there is a relic. It is a strand of her hair, actually an actual piece of Mother Teresa's hair. So it's a chance to kind of feel that presence, to ask for her intercession. And to remember, we don't pray to the saints, we pray with them. We pray with them in communion to get closer to God.